welcome to another deep dive with Peter Homburg on the current legalization. This deep dive is always taking place on the last Thursday of each month and covering the most relevant topics within the cannabis industry. A few words about Peter. Peter Homburg is a partner and the head of the German Life Science Practices and the European Cannabis Group at Dentons. In 2020, he co-founded the European Cannabis Association called ECA. I'm excited to have Peter here. I'm super curious what that leaked draft means for the industry. Welcome, Peter.
Yeah, Falk, thank you very much for the kind introduction. Once again, welcome to one of the deep dive webinars always hosted at the last Thursday of a month. Today, we are going to talk about the current legalization for recreational cannabis in Germany, which indeed has taken a little bit of speed compared to months of waiting for the European Commission. Let me share my screen with you in order to see. Here we go. Okay. So I hope you can see that. Wonderful. Okay, so what is I think interesting to mention that today we have in hand the first draft of a new cannabis law, which actually is trying to describe the first step into the legalization of cannabis for recreational purposes in Germany. I'm going to take you all through an overview what has actually happened. And of course, then we are talking a little bit about the various articles. Article 1, which is really the key of that draft, which is the creation of the Cannabis Abgabe, because that's the Cannabis Dispensary Act, as it's called. Article 2 is amending certain laws, in particular also the German Narcotics Act. And Article 8 is amending the Road Traffic Act. So let us go again through the historical steps here. As we all know, and as we have discussed it in the past, in December 2021, the coalition, the new coalition of the German Parliament introduced in their coalition treaty the legalization aspect of cannabis for adults for recreational purposes through licensed shops. That's what they actually said. In June 2022, there was a consultation process initiated by the Federal Drug Commissioner Burkhard Blinert with the consequence that various experts in that consultation process gave their opinion on how that could work. And then later on in October 2022, Federal Minister of Health Karl Lauterbach presented the German government's key point paper for preliminary review by the EU Commission. The key paper, and I described it in one of our last webinars, was a 180 degrees turnaround of the prohibition policy so far applied to recreational use of cannabis in Germany, which indeed was groundbreaking, as I would say, because the government intended to have cultivation in Germany performed under the government control. Distribution should be also then follow under the government control through licensed dispensaries. And of course, also the consumption as far as possible should have been controlled by the government. The key objectives was and still are that the use should be better protected. The consumers should be receiving other and more qualified products and compared to those currently available on the black market. And of course, the black market should be to a certain extent attacked. This position paper was presented to the European Commission because the position paper, in fact, would have violated not only the UN conventions, but also, and that is even more important, the European Schengen Agreement, the basis for the European Union, with the consequence that the EU Commission and other member states could have actually initiated a respective breach, and it could have gone to the European Court of Justice in order to stop the German government for implementing this respective law. The consultation, which was productive talks, as Mr. Lauterbach said, were then followed by a second key point paper published in April 2023. It is indeed totally different from what the original paper in October 2022 presented, because we are now facing a plan B, as I would say, the legalization of cannabis for recreational use, as actually planned in October 2022, is off the table. However, Plan B looks different, I would say, with a two-pillar model. The first pillar, and that's what the concrete current draft law, which has been leaked to the public, contemplates. The first pillar is that home grow of up to 3 female plants would be allowed, and of course the possibility to incorporate, to found so-called cannabis clubs, which could actually distribute and hand out cannabis which is grown by the club to its members. So I would say cannabis clubs. In German, we would say Anbaugenossenschaft instead of a cannabis club, because in this club, consumption is not allowed, and you can just take your cannabis from there as a member. So let's see how this looks like, actually. This is, in quotes, a very brief overview about the content of the draft law. It has 8 different articles. The main article is in one, where the creation of this cannabis law is contemplated, with over 54 different paragraphs. And then followed by the respective amendments to the Narcotics Act, very important, we will address it in a minute, and of course other laws which are in relation to that new cannabis law to be changed, including the Road Traffic Act. So here's a short overview of what the contents of that two-pillar model actually shows. Now we're talking about the first pillar here. First of all, it's individual non-commercial cultivation at home of up to 3 plants, with the strong obligation to prevent access to minors. So where do those home growers get their seeds from? Well, they will get them from the so-called cannabis clubs, here non-commercial cultivation associations, which are allowed to hand over in the presence of a member to a non-member seeds or seedlings in order to do home grow of one of 3 plants back at home. The second part of that first pillar of the two-pillar model is that the establishment of the respective cannabis association or growing cultivation associations of up to 500 members. Each member, which is over the age of 21, can obtain up to 50 grams cannabis flowers per month, 25 grams per day as a maximum. Important that the German government is actually implementing a kind of an age barrier. Those members which are between 18 to 21 can only get 30 grams of cannabis flowers, but only with a THC content of up to 10%. Furthermore, the respective cultivation associations have to guarantee certain quality standards. We have an absolute ban of advertising for cannabis products. And of course, the associations are and have an obligation to monitor and document. Very detailed documentation is necessary, that the cannabis is only grown to a certain extent, to a certain quantity, and only then handed over to their members with the respective registration of the members, personally providing the identity card, and of course with the respective age check. This two columns here of the first pillar model that goes along with the decriminalization of the possession of cannabis of an amount up to 25 grams. So if you are carrying 25 grams of cannabis with you, you will not be prosecuted anymore. There are a number of complicated rules for consumption of the cannabis, which you have actually either obtained from your 3 female plants at home or from the respective cultivation association. So there are certain exclusions regarding zones around kindergartens, schools, and stadiums, but also for a certain period of time between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. It should not be consumed in any kind of pedestrian areas in the cities. There are new criminal provisions which are included in this new cannabis law, and I will explain why that's the case. Because actually the cannabis-related active substance is taken out of the German Narcotics Act, which I think is a real step forward here. What does that mean? First of all the respective violations of the Narcotics Act are not longer applicable to cannabis, and the respective punishments of any kind of violation are significantly lowered in this new Cannabis Act, and we will definitely in one of the next webinars address that in more details. With having said that, this new cannabis law actually provides now for a framework in the first place to have A, home grow, B, the cannabis clubs, and C, actually a decriminalization of the possession of cannabis to a significant extent. So what does that mean for the legal situation for medical cannabis actually? Because the removal of the regulations on cannabis from the Narcotics Act affects also medical cannabis. As we all know, currently medical cannabis is a marketable narcotics under the German Narcotics Act and can be only obtained from the pharmacies upon medical prescription. With the current draft law, cannabis will no longer be a narcotic and would only qualify as a medicine, which means, of course, in RX medicine, you need still a prescription for obtaining cannabis. But this has, of course, an impact on the prescription policy. You don't need a special narcotics prescription. You just have a just normal RX prescription, which are, of course, redeemable for a longer period of time. And it may be the case, and that's currently discussed also in Germany, that this cannabis can be then e-prescribed. You can actually receive an e-prescription in the future. And that is currently, as we all know, not possible for narcotics. This has to be always handed over to the patient and always handed over to the pharmacist in order to secure the respective supply to the right person of a narcotic. Important to mention is also the amendment to the Road Traffic Act. Currently, we have the situation that it is, of course, not permissible to drive a car under a certain influence of even medical cannabis. However, there are no current requirements very clearly set out. What is actually the borderline? What's the threshold? How much can I actually have as an intake in order to still be able to drive a car safely? the federal ministry will probably examine limit values in the near future. That is also mentioned in the draft Cannabis Act. And I think that's relatively important to find kind of a thresholds kind of a limit. On the other hand, we all know that this is totally different from alcohol because the respective individual reacts differently on cannabis, and it can be still already be safe to drive a car, but you still have any kind of possibility to see whether the person has taken cannabis beforehand, even if he is fully able to drive a car. So overall, what does that mean here? The draft does not contain any major surprises. It is, from our point of view, not very accurate in certain aspects. You will see most of the questions which you also may have. How should the cultivation be performed by a cannabis club? Can they do that in their backyard? Do they have to have a greenhouse, or must it be indoor? It's difficult to answer. There are actually aspects that greenhouse cultivation is allowed, but it is also said that it should be a secured cultivation, which means there are definitely security measurements to be implemented into the greenhouse and its surrounding. Nobody knows how this should look like. We know that from the medical cannabis cultivation of the 3 licensees in Germany that the respective security measurements have been extreme. Whether they will be applied here in the same way is not yet laid out here. What is also, I think, very difficult to implement is this THC limit for the 18 to 21-year-old. Of course, they will do kind of checks on the association, on the cultivation associations, but the question is, what about home grow? It's maybe really difficult to see. Do you have a female plant which has flowers of a 10% THC content or less, or even more? You know, nobody actually at home has the possibility to check that in much detail. State authorities are supposed to carry out random checks on the cultivation associations, but there are no quality controls for cultivation at home. I think that's makes the matter kind of, I would say, questionable at least. Aspects as protection of minors were included in the draft law, but how this will be implemented in the future is difficult really to say. The draft itself, and these are the next steps here, is now discussed between the various ministries which are involved in the decision-making process, in the lawmaking process. It is planned that this first draft law will be discussed in the cabinet with all ministers before the summer break, which is beginning of July, middle of July. But whether this is going to happen is, from my point of view, still questionable because of so many open issues in that draft law. However, it gave us the possibility to see how the government would like to implement that. And of course, still the question is, how does the opposition react on this? We have heard already from the conservative states in Germany that they will not implement that under no circumstances. Well, let's see what the discussion will bring out. That was also probably the motivation why this has already been leaked, in order to initiate the respective discussion about that draft law. Having said that, I think I would like to come to the end of my presentation, and I'm open to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter. Great for giving us the summary. Are there any questions